Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. Joined Thursday night as usual with Bob and EJ, special guest Scott. Scott, it's been a while since I've seen you on podcast. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. EJ, anything new in your world?
Nothing new, but same old, just keep plugging along.
Okay. And Bob, you're like running back-to-back podcasts again tonight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thursday night we go live. We had a very lively discussion about Darius Slay versus Jair Alexander, and there was a little bit of a battle in the podcast. And then we all agreed that ESPN doesn't know what the hell they're doing when they named their all-century team.
I'll agree there.
And what I was telling Bob pre-show is that I have gotten to the point of like NFL fandom that I no longer watch ESPN or NFL Network.
For live sports.
I have the front row seat to 80 of the best podcasters in the entire universe. And I'd rather talk about it with you guys than watch somebody else talk about it on TV.
Well, we need content, Jim, and they were dumb enough to write a really dumb article, so you gotta rip it.
Yeah. And Owen's stopping by. So Owen's on Mondays and Wednesdays. So Owen, it is good to see you. Thank you very much for stopping by. So we are going to be doing the Seahawks second. We are going to do the Atlanta Falcons first. And EJ, let's kick this off with you. How do you see the Atlanta Falcons offensive scheme?
So it's going to be a mixed bag because they made the quarterback change from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix. Michael Penix, who I liked coming out very much. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback down the line. But so I watched about 2 games when they had Michael Penix because who wants to watch Kirk Cousins? So
Kirk Cousins hate. I love it.
Yeah. So
the run game's designed with Kirk Cousins, though.
Yeah, you can, but it's just like I've seen enough. Like being in the NFC East, I've seen enough of Kirk. I've had enough of him.
I get
but
it.
With what they were trying to figure out what works best with Michael. They did some bootleg stuff. They did some. I really liked his drive throws down the field. Like he can rip a seam route any day. Yes, I mean I love it. He's got a bit of a wind up with his release, but it don't matter because his arm is so strong. From what I've seen, I watched the game against the Giants where the Giants were completely outmatched, and I watched against the Commanders. But it's like one common theme I've seen with just the small sample size, those 2 games was one thing I want to see him get better at in year 2. Hit your layups, like the little quick game throws. Sometimes he put a little bit too much on those passes. He did have a lot of drops. I don't think the receivers were quite used to the velocity that he puts on the ball. But I think after training camp and more time getting comfortable with him, I think they'll be better at that. But my thing is hit your layups, hit your quick game stuff. When they went down the field with him, like if he want to put something on a rope, he can put something on a rope. Like the seam routes they did to Drake London, and for the love of God, get Kyle Pitts more involved, please, or at least trade him to the Eagles, one or the other. But you want to rip, he can rip stuff down the field. I want to see him layer his throws a little bit better. He had some shot plays that he overthrew, which is understandable. You got to get used to the timing of your receivers. You got to get used to the feel of everything of the offense. But it's a work in progress with what they're doing. I like the fact that they got the same offensive coordinator coming back, so it's some continuity coming back, and I think he's going to be very, very good going forward. It's pretty much going to be night and day with what they did last season to what they do this season, because I mean, Kirk Cousins at this point in his career has clear limitations that Michael Penix just doesn't have. Michael Penix does have a little bit more mobility. We see the arm strength and everything like that. But what I would like to see going forward with their offense, make it the Bijan show, starting off. Hand him the ball. Bijan is talented enough; he can run anything. They like to do outside zone, but he can do gap scheme. He can do the pin pull stuff, the duo stuff. He can run anything. I want to see them keep him involved in the passing game as well. but make it Bijan first and foremost, and then work your way out from there. I want to see a more down the field attacking scheme because I think that's where Michael Penix can really rip it. You got a guy in Darnell Mooney who can really run. You got a guy in Drake London that can win down the field. If you want to hit those seam routes to Kyle Pitts, you can do that. But I want to see him ripping stuff, being a more aggressive down the field, and pretty much starting off earlier in the season while Michael Penix gets used to everything in year 2. I want to see Bijan, a heavy dose of Bijan.
Okay. And Bob, how do you see the Falcons offense?
You know, with Zach Robinson, he's a guy who, when he was available a couple of years ago, I desperately wanted the Steelers to go after, but they didn't. We got Arthur Smith instead. Strangely enough, they fired Atlanta Falcons head coach.
So, sorry, just 3 years of the Arthur Smith train, and his interviews, and he's just not a likable dude. So if you don't like him, I get it.
I actually do like him. I think he's, you know, he has a kind of a little bit of a home in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh media loves him. I mean, they absolutely love it when he talks to them. You know, the kind of interesting thing about Arthur Smith, for those who don't know, he is rich beyond rich. His family, I think it was 3M, 3M products, which office supplies. That guy doesn't have to work a day in his life. He's kind of a grinder. I kind of feel bad for the whole Atlanta situation because, you know, quarterback play, you got the ghost of Matt Ryan, Desmond Ridder. Now, he had a hand in picking those quarterbacks. Don't get me wrong.
He pushed Matt Ryan out.
Yeah.
Ryan didn't want to leave.
But in retrospect,
politics behind there.
Right.
That Arthur Smith is a big reason why the quarterback situation was what it was. He handpicked the quarterbacks that he had the entire time there and couldn't do anything with them. So that is all on Arthur Smith.
But in retrospect, he pushed Matt Ryan out. Matt Ryan goes to the Colts. I forget. How did he do? Wasn't he benched halfway through the year?
He didn't do well with the Colts, but he was fine in 2021. And he would have been fine in 2022 had he not had to completely uproot his whole life and move to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
That had a big thing there.
Yeah, I mean, when you get that age quarterback, most quarterbacks don't age well. So I don't totally begrudge him pushing Matt Ryan at the end out there. I kind of get it, where if you're a big Falcons fan, maybe you didn't want to see probably the best quarterback in your franchise's history. You know, all due respect to Michael Vick and Steve Bartkowski. But probably your most decorated quarterback.
You're never going to
forgetting Jeff George. Falcons.
Jeff George was a drunk like Favre.
What about Chris Chandler?
Yeah, there you go.
Chris Chandler actually took him to a Super Bowl. Like, that's a good point. Yeah.
Chris Chandler is the third best quarterback in Falcons history. It's Matt Ryan, Steve Bartkowski, Chris Chandler, Michael Vick. And the reason why Michael Vick is fourth, if you go back and actually look at what he did in Atlanta, not what he did for his whole career, but what he did in Atlanta, he was a great video game quarterback, but he was not actually that great of a quarterback in Atlanta. Exactly. He was a barely top 10 guy for 2 years. He was a league average guy for 2 years. Great runner, but that's what brought him up to league average. This was what brought him up to top 10. He was not a great quarterback in Atlanta. He had some great moments, like that Minnesota Vikings moment where he had three guys run into each other. He had that great moment in Green Bay where he led that big comeback, but he's our fourth best quarterback in history.
Yeah. And to your point about Michael Vick, real quick, he'll even tell you that himself. When he was here in Philly, he got under Andy Reid. He said back in my Atlanta days, I didn't know how to play quarterback. He said the coaching staff would give him the game plan for the week. He would throw it in the trunk of his car and not look at it at all. And he would just wing it for the rest of the game. And he said just under Andy Reid, that's when he really learned how to play quarterback. And that's where we saw the best of Michael Vick.
Yeah.
Yes. Because like even what I remembered with Vic, I have two distinct Vic memories. So one is that Michael Vick, when he was with Atlanta, led me to my first ever fantasy football championship. So he was the quarterback on that team. So, and then when he went to Philadelphia, you know, we had always heard about 3, 5, 7-step drops. Andy Reid realized what he had and invented a 9-step drop so that Vic could step up and start running at the line of scrimmage as he was doing his processing. So if it didn't open up, he was already moving forward so he could start taking off and running.
Yep.
So I remember the 9-step drop with Andy Reid and Michael Vick in Philadelphia.
Well, and Andy Reid's just a quarterback whisperer. He can make any quarterback look good, design his whole scheme around what that quarterback does well, and make them look like the best quarterback in the league. He made McNabb look like a top 5 quarterback when he had McNabb. He did it with Vick. He's done it with Alex Smith, made Alex Smith look like a top 10 quarterback.
Yep.
Revived his whole career. And now with Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. Probably the most naturally talented guy he's had since Michael Vick, but also the guy who's actually willing to put in the work.
Yeah. And just like that, he's made lower round quarterbacks into fool's gold. Back in the early 2000s, they drafted a quarterback out of Oregon named AJ Feely. He played 3 games as a backup for the Eagles. And he looked so good. The next year, the Dolphins traded a 2nd-round pick for him. Then they drafted Kevin Cobb in the 2nd round.
Kevin Cobb.
He played 2 games, had 300 yards passing. The Cardinals traded Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie and a 2nd-round pick for him. And neither one of those guys panned out in their new places. But Andy Reid is pretty much a quarterback guru. Probably one of the best I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
I will say this about Michael Vick. You mentioned Green Bay. You mentioned Minnesota. Vick in Atlanta, the tie game versus the Steelers in 2002 when Maddox threw for almost 500 yards. That's one of the best football games I have ever seen, most exciting. Vick threw for almost 300 yards, only passed for 1 touchdown. But, I mean, he was electric all over the field. And, Tommy Maddox was Tommy Maddox, the very best of Tommy Maddox, lights out, throwing the ball all down the field, turning the ball over every other possession. So,
that Falcons defense was fun that year too, because they still had Ray Buchanan out there playing safety instead of corner. They had a couple guys like Brian Scott out there that they were trying to work out, but I mean, Keith Brooking, you had, I think Tuggle retired the year before that, but you had Brooking, you had Kearney. You had some fun players on that team.
I think, going back real quick to the Falcons offense, now that we've taken our side trip to Arthur Smith, the one quibble I have with the Falcons offense is I do think Penix is going to be okay. I don't think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I think he's going to be a 12 to 18-ish type of quarterback, which is good. You can win a lot of games. Yeah, you can win a lot of games in the NFL that way, and especially with Zach Robinson kind of bringing that Sean McVay. He's put his own little flavors on it, but there's a lot of those same Rams context. The thing I did not like about what the Falcons did this offseason, I think Drake London is pretty good. I think Darnell Mooney is okay. Maybe even above average. I've seen the Ray McLeod show, and yes, he played pretty well for the Falcons last year. But if that's your guy, I mean, where was the receiver? Why didn't they pick a receiver? I know they needed defensive help, but Raheem Morris, I think, made a huge mistake not adding a play.
I'll pivot this to you in a second, but I know from listening to Clint and listening to Scott during mock draft season that the Falcons didn't even visit with an offensive player at the combine.
They only visited with the offensive linemen at the combine. It was bat boys and defense. That's all they looked at.
Yep. So, Scott, the resident Falcons fan. So, how would you describe the Falcons' offensive scheme, like running game, inside zone, outside zone, gap power? How would you describe the schemes they're trying to run?
So, run game is pretty much 70 to 75% outside zone and inside zone. And then there's the occasional trap, the occasional pin pull, the occasional gap, the occasional like toss, sweep, toss, crack. For the most part, though, you're getting outside zone or you're getting inside zone. If Algiers in there, more than likely inside zone. If Robinson's in there, more than likely outside zone or a toss, crack or something like that. Robinson can do a lot more than Algier can. Algier can run outside and inside zone, but he's not really good with any of the gap or power concepts. He is very much a zone running back. Let me find the hole. Let me cut. Let me get through that hole. That's Tyler Algier. And I'm okay with that. Even though he's not a fast running back, he reminds me a lot of like a Alfred Morris type, right?
Mm-hmm.
He might only run a 4.6, but he's going to run through you and he's going to get his 5-6 yards. So they do run a lot of mix with those two, and they're going to keep doing a lot of mixing with those two, where it's more of like a 70-30 split, or even like I'm going to mess with your numbers here, but it's going to be more like a 70-40 split even. We're going to see a lot of plays this year where they're going to have both Algier and Robinson on the field running 21 personnel out of a gun. You're going to see a lot of Kyle Pitts lined up as a big slot receiver versus as a true tight end.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a lot more of Drake London. And now I get you don't like Drake London. I get you don't think he's a number one receiver. I respectfully recommend you watching a few more games on him, especially that Panthers game.
Mm-hmm.
He's big and slow, though. I mean,
He's
he is what he is. I mean, he's a jump ball guy. He's a glorified tight end to me.
Who cares? He wins his battles. That's the thing. They scheme him open. He runs a great dig. They run a lot of digs for him. He runs a great post. They run a lot of posts for him. He runs a great corner. They run a lot of corners for him. They're just running what these guys do well and making that a feature in the offense. Darnell Mooney runs a great 9, runs a great deep out, runs a great deep dig. That's what he runs. That's what his job is in the offense. And they have
I don't know if you can have great and Darnell Mooney collide in the same sentence, though.
Again, I'm only talking about certain routes here, right? I'm not putting Darnell Mooney on a dig over the middle 15 yards where he's going to get lit up by a safety. That's not his game. That is why you have Drake London and Kyle Pitts, though. Those guys run those same kinds of routes. So when you got these guys and you use them the way you're supposed to use them, and you design your scheme around, hey, what do my guys do well, which is what Zach Robinson is doing, versus the opposite of, hey, let me plug these guys in where I think they should be in my scheme. He's saying, hey, what can these guys do and how do I adapt my scheme to them? So that's a big piece of the passing thing. And I think Kyle Pitts is going to have a much better year this year because I think he'll be that second, third read this year a lot more than that fourth, fifth decoy read like he was last year.
There's a lot of buzz, though. He might get traded.
It's not coming from inside the house. So if you've ever it's coming from all these other teams saying, we want Kyle Pitts. We would love to trade for Kyle Pitts. And then the Falcons are like, cool. You give us a first round pick, we'll do it. If you give us a second round pick and like a future other pick, yeah, we might do it. But right now, no, we're keeping Pitts. Our goal is to have Pitts. Have Pitts, London, Robinson, Mooney. Those are the big names. Now, I know you mentioned Ray McLeod. The Falcons only had 5 draft picks. 4 of them were on defense. 1 was on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. Just like what the Combine would have made you suspect, right? They did go out and sign Nick Nash in undrafted free agency. A lot of people loved Nick Nash. I personally had a 4th round grade on him. I thought he was a really good receiver. He was just old. I don't factor age into my grades. A lot of people do. He was 24, 25 years old. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie. I don't care about that stuff. They also went out and signed Josh Simon out of South Carolina to be another tight end. Mm-hmm. Those guys, as undrafted free agents, have real shots at being the tight end 2, the wide receiver 3, or wide receiver 4. Mm-hmm. And the team loves them. So I wouldn't be shocked if those 2 guys get a lot of run. By the end of the year, you go and, oh, where did these guys come from? Why weren't these guys drafted? They should have been based on film, but they're both 24-year-old rookies. So what can you do when you got 24-year-old rookie? Not a lot of ceiling there at that point.
Your ceiling is essentially the 4-year rookie deal.
Exactly.
Right? Like meaning that it's with the 24-year-old rookie, I think the challenge is more, what do you do at contract 2?
Exactly.
It's not, are they going to be an effective pro for the limited time that you have them?
Yeah.
Right. But okay. Why don't we pivot? Oh, go ahead.
Just one thing. I think you always have to be careful, and the Steelers fall into this trap all the time. You start to look at those undrafted free agents. Every once in a while, you hit gold like a Jalen Warren type. But when you start counting on those guys to be key parts of your team, I think you're setting yourself up. And I look, there were no great free agents this year, but there were some guys who Gabe Davis is still out there. The reports are starting to come now that teams are starting to think that he may be ready by the end of September. And if that's the case, somebody's going to sign him. And, maybe a guy like that is somebody you want to look at versus an undrafted free agent.
What'd you say? What'd you say the guy's name was?
Gabe Davis.
Gabe
Davis. That's not really fitting the wide receiver 3 for Atlanta, though, right?
Yeah, but he's an improvement on wide receiver 2 over Darnell Mooney.
No, he's not.
No, but Davis and Mooney, you wouldn't use them the same way. There's no way
you need to go back and watch.
Davis is a glorified tight end in a wide receiver body.
Yeah, and I think with the Falcons offense is I don't think you look at the individual players. I don't think they're looking for a superhero.
No,
they need to be the sum of all their parts, because if you want to keep the defense honest and keep the safeties back, you can run down Darnell Mooney on a 9 route, and then while they're paying attention to Darnell Mooney on a 9 route, you can work the middle or the underneath with Kyle Pitts or Drake London. Thing about Drake London is he may not be the best separator and all that, but he is good after the catch. You can get him run him as a big slot. Maybe you can get him on some slants and he can get you yards after the catch. He can do damage in different ways. I think they're just a some of their all parts offense, because with that type of offense, you can morph into whatever beats the defense on every given week. I think that's a little bit better than having your superstar wide receiver or superstar offensive player. When you got the whole offense around you where you have an answer to every move the defense wants to make, I think that's what makes the best offenses.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a separator,
let me add something to that.
So they do have a separator. They have the separator in Darnell Mooney.
Yeah.
And Drake London, here's the thing. Darnell Mooney and Drake London both had great separation last year on a lot of the routes that they weren't targeted.
And
Drake London,
I want to build on something that Scott and EJ said. So one of the things about a wide receiver room and a passing concept is you have to know if you're focused on a guy or if you're just trying to get the sum of the parts, like EJ mentioned, because Darnell Mooney, to Scott's point, you don't need to feed Mooney a lot of targets for Mooney to be effective, which to me is also the same thing that EJ said. Right? You need guys that when you're like Mooney might get 5 reps a game, right? Like 5 targets. He'll be on the field for more than that, but he's going to be targeted about 5 times. You want him to maximize those 5 targets. You don't need
4 of them for 60 yards.
Right. And if between like London and Pitts, you're getting, we'll say like 18 targets between the 2 of them a game, that's an effective passing game. But you want to be able to distribute that. You don't want to have to funnel necessarily 150 targets to 1 or 2 guys. You want to be able to spread it around. That's what's going to make Penix and the entire offense and the entire team play better, in my opinion.
So, when you talk about an elite separator, though, he only catches for his career right at 60% of his targets. To me, that doesn't necessarily mean he's open. And this is kind of my whole problem with the Atlanta offense, is there is a lot of relying on a rookie quarterback to throw to guys who don't get a ton of separation. They just don't.
Bob, you're looking more on the stats when I'm saying focus on the film, right? The film with Drake London, he may not have 7 yards of separation, but he's got 2 yards and he's got the body position because he used to play basketball, and he uses his body positioning to give him that extra yard just with his arms hanging out. He catches the ball with his fingertips. So he's got that extra yard right there of separation of ball from receipt, ball from corner, ball from guy on him, ball from coverage. So that's 3 yards of separation right there. You don't need more than that in the NFL. You just have to get open enough to where your quarterback can hit you with the ball, especially when you're 10 yards down the field. That's a first down. Like, he's Keyshawn Johnson. He's not like people want him to be, Julio Jones or Calvin or one of these guys. He's never been that guy. When I was scouting him, watching him at Southern Cal, I was like, this guy's Keyshawn Johnson. And he keeps playing exactly the way Keyshawn did his entire career. So don't go in it looking at it like he's, Calvin, and we're saying he's Calvin. We're not saying he's Calvin. We're saying he's Keyshawn.
So, EJ, what was your draft scouting report on Drake London when he was coming out?
I thought he was like his strengths are, high pointing the ball, contested catch. You could tell on the film he wasn't a burner, but he was big and he was strong, and he had run after the catch ability. My projection for him was I thought he could be an excellent volume catcher. I would bounce him around between the boundary X receiver position and a big slot position. Both of those positions is where he can use his size, he can use his strength, and he can use his run after the catch ability, and that would be the best usage of him. I don't project receivers as like Pro Bowlers or anything like that. I just project them as what role do they fit the best. As far as Drake London, I mean, what you see is what you get with him. He's a big possession receiver. As far as separation, there's ways around that in today's NFL because he's not seeing man coverage every down. And if he is seeing man coverage, you can put him in a slot where he's not seeing man coverage. You can put him in a bunch set where you're not seeing man coverage. You can put him in a stack where you're not seeing man coverage. And then again, if he's seeing zone, that's instant separation. All you got to do is sit in the middle of the zone. So there are ways to get around separating. As far as Darnell Mooney goes, if you play him with man coverage, there's a good chance he can run by you, or a defensive back will overplay that 9 route and he can break it off and bring the comeback route. So there's ways around it. That's the chess match between offense and defense. There's ways these guys can be effective. They don't have to be the most dynamic separators in the league, but they separate enough to where it works. And plus, Kyle Pitts separates, and he's not going against cornerbacks. He may be going against a safety, or maybe he's going against a linebacker. With all these passing concepts, there are ways to get guys separation. You can manufacture separation. It's never just go win on your route by yourself. That's a bad offensive coordinator. So these guys, I think these guys, if Michael Penix works out, these guys will be able to have success, and they'll be able to get open on a regular basis.
And Scott, how the Falcons are using Drake London, does that match what your scouting report on him was coming out?
It matches mine and EJ's scouting report on him coming out. It's, hey, let's line him up at the X. Let's line him up in the big slot. Let's line him up at the Z. They literally line him up in the big slot, in the X, in the Z, in almost equal parts. He's the X 40% of the time. He's the big slot 35% of the time. He's the Z 25% of the time. They line him up everywhere. They say, hey, you go out there, you run your routes crisp, you do your thing, you'll get the ball. He goes out there, he runs his routes crisp, he gets the ball, he does a great job. Maybe not separating in Bob's traditional, like, I need 5 yards of a gap, but in the traditional, in like the, hey, I've got my ability right here to catch this ball, throw it here, I'm going to go get it, and I'm going to run through someone. And then Tyler Algier has that same, I'm going to run through someone. And Bijan Robinson has that same, I'm going to run through someone. Kyle Pitts has that, I'm going to run through someone mentality. So they're going back to more of the 90s Falcons offenses where it's like, yeah, we may not be beating you with all these deep balls everywhere, but we're going to run through you even in the passing game.
So, Bob, what was your scouting report on Drake London as he was coming out?
I had him as the 5th wide receiver in the class. I was really surprised he was the number 1 pick. I liked Garrett Wilson over him. I liked Olave over him. I liked Jameson Williams over him. The 4th guy is escaping me right this second. But yeah, and he was the better he was better than George Pickens in my eyes as the contested catch guy, because I thought he had more upside and more physicality on the inside, whereas Pickens, while he had fantastic hands, I always felt like he was just kind of a one-trick outside guy, whereas I felt London could go over the middle, which is why I liked him. I think it comes down to a little bit of preference. I don't need my guy to get 5 yards of separation, but I do want my guy to be fast. I like big fat Christian Watson is the other guy I had over. I love Christian Watson. I was a
Christian
huge
Watson's
Christian
a
Watson
fun guy. I get
Yeah.
it, right? So, Olave's good with separation. Wilson's good with separation. Those are guys that are traditional separators. I just think that sometimes it helps to look in that other side of it of who's a good box out guy, because the Falcons are starting to do more of a NBA team as their receiving core.
Yeah.
They've got.
I think that's the league trend. And
Kyle
I think that's one of the things we should be emphasizing from a scheme standpoint, because first of all, I'm curious if Scott's dog sees EJ's cat. Are they both like
they're going to go? Yeah, they're going to take over the podcast if that happens.
Nah, my dog's not looking at the screen.
This was.
But I think the idea of that basketball room, I've heard the same thing, that Buffalo's doing the same thing. I've heard that from Green Bay. To me, Kansas City's doing the same thing. It's more about building a room than needing the CeeDee Lamb alpha. Like if you have the Jamar Chase of the CeeDee Lamb or the Julio Jones of a decade ago, that's great. But those guys don't grow on trees. Right, like
the Jay Jettas, like they're rare.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
Well, and in the Falcons' case, though, they did. In fairness, they passed on those 4 fast, big receivers. Jameson Williams ain't big, but the other 3 are. They passed on those guys for Drake London. Which, if you're going to build your offense that way, sure, no problem. I get it. But just look at Philly, AJ Brown. Jalen, there are guys that can be had that are bigger, faster guys. I think it's a preference thing. It's not that I think Drake London is a bad player. I wouldn't want my offense built around a big, slow wide receiver, and to me, that's what he is.
But I don't know that the offense is built around him.
Yeah, I don't think the offense is built around him.
It's not. The offense is built around. The offense is built around Bijan Robinson in the run game. It's going to have a lot of play action next year. Kirk Cousins couldn't even get a handoff time properly half the time. So you're going to see a lot of play action this next year with Penix in there. And it's going to be built heavily on Bijan and the play action and Drake and Kyle Pitts and Mooney running route combinations. And who's the open man? That's where the ball's going. I don't care who's open. You get open, you get the ball. You don't get open, you don't get the ball. Right?
Yep.
And open with a guy with the arm arrogance that Michael Penix has. I mean, I recommend going back and watching that Carolina game, EJ, because he made some insane throws in that game where you're like, why did you make that throw? Holy crap, you completed it. Like, so like you're just like, okay, well, that was ridiculous. If I'm this coach, I'm saying, hey, hit the dig underneath that's wide open instead of that next time. But like, holy crap, that was a great throw.
Yep.
So it really depends. I agree. It depends. If Penix takes a step, this can all work. If Penix regresses at all, or even just we find out, hey, you're 5 games in was just an anomaly. This is what the guy plays like. I mean, to me, that's where you got to have a fast guy to kind of help you out. And Mooney's fast. I've never liked his game. I think he's like a good 3rd, 4th guy. That's what.
If you go off old evaluations and you don't continually update your evaluations on these players and continually update what you can see what they are, you're gonna have that bias in the back of your head of, hey, this is what I've always seen them as. So they're never going to be good or they're never going to fit what works. Sometimes if that guy just goes to a new scheme and looks completely different, I'm going to throw another Falcon out there who did that. Michael Turner.
Yep.
He was behind LaDainian Tomlinson in San Diego. Looked okay. When we signed him, I was like, I mean, I guess he's an average running back. First year goes out and puts up like 1,500, 1,600 yards. I'm like, okay, no. Michael Turner's a beast. Like, this dude's a monster. I'm so glad we have him. But it took seeing that. So sometimes you just got to reevaluate some of these guys each year. And that's why I like the idea of going back in the summer and actually pro scouting. That's what I do most of my summers. I go back and I watch the different pro guys. And I'm like, okay, so who's this guy and what can he do and how does he fit in his new spot?
Mhm.
who are going to be the true breakout guys. Like,
But if you go back and look at Mooney last year, 100+ targets, 60% of his passes. It's kind of what he's been his whole career.
average,
And if you're a
average
separator,
depth of
I
target.
need to see you at 65 to 70%.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Average depth of target for Mooney, though, is a lot higher than a lot of other receivers. So if you're going down the field 15 yards, you're going to get a lot more wild throws from your quarterback than if you're going down the field 6-7 yards. And that's what Mooney was seeing last year. He was getting a lot of wild throws from Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
He had a couple wild throws from Penix. Sometimes you're deep, you're open, and that throw's just off. And Penix didn't get to practice with the ones until he started that game against the Giants. So he didn't have that chemistry with really anybody. And in 2 weeks, he was already hitting Mooney downfield for 20-yard outs. So, like, Mooney is one of those guys that I think is going to take off with Penix this year because he can run those 20-yard outs and all of that. But he's still probably only going to catch 60% of the passes thrown his way because, again, average depth of target is going to be high for him. And that's just the type of receiver he is. Jamison Williams is going to be the same kind of guy in Detroit.
Yep.
You know, if you're a deep ball guy and you're a deep ball guy, like Gabe Davis is very similar for what he did in Buffalo. Like if you're a deep ball guy, you're not going to have 70-80% of your catches, your targets caught. Now, a guy like Drake London is probably going to have 80 to 85% of his targets caught. You know, a guy like Kyle Pitts should have 70 to 80% of his targets caught.
Your volume catchers.
Because those are your more volume catchers, so they should be catching everything. But, yeah, you're not going to see Darnell Mooney at 75, 80% because he's going downfield so far. Those are tough passes to complete at any level, let alone the NFL.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you gotta add context to some of these numbers sometimes.
So I'm looking at Drake London. It's only 62%.
Well, so let's pivot. If we look at Owen's comment here, like I think I'd rather have Pitts because I just think he's closer to a generational talent than London. That's my instinct. But Scott, what's your take on that?
I have the exact opposite thought on that.
Okay.
Because London is a future team captain. Like London is a nasty attitude on the field. Off the field, he's a hard worker, good guy in the community. Like I'd much rather have London than Pitts long term. London goes out there, grinds, shows up. He is the number one target in the passing offense, but he's earned that right, and he shows every single year why he's been the number one target in that passing offense. Like, and what's kind of lost with London is he does have really good rack ability. Even though he doesn't have a ton of speed, again, he's going to catch it, he's going to run through you, and he's going to get another 8-9 yards. I don't care if he's not going to ever break a 75-yard touchdown the way Julio Jones did. I just want a guy who's going to keep the ball moving down the field.
Yep.
You know, the guy who's supposed to be our big play guy like that is Bijan anyway, right? Pitts, Bijan, those are the big play guys. Mooney. London was never designed to be a big play guy. His longest touchdown in his career is probably only ever going to be 40 yards, 45 yards. But I don't care about that. I just want my guy, if he's my number one receiver and it's 3rd and 7, I want him to go out there and get me 8 to 9 yards minimum. And
so EJ, how about you, London or Pitts?
I look at the positional value. I'm always going to start. I'll pick London because I'm going to start my receiver room with wide receiver. I love Pitts. He's from Philly. I would love to see him in Eagle Green. But he's an absolute unicorn. But from the tight end position, what he plays, he's limited in what he can do as opposed to a wide receiver. So I need to start my wide receiver room with the wide receiver that's more reliable, the wide receiver that I know has a specific package that I can give to my quarterback and say, this guy's going to be open on this route, and this route. And then I can build my complementary receivers around this guy. Whereas my tight end, you still need him to block in your running game. And he where he's running his routes at is going to be in the middle of the field. That makes it much easier for a defense to put the clamps on your passing game. So I gotta, for positional value purposes, I gotta start with Drake London.
So,
and Bob, how about you? Do you go Pitts or London if you had to decide how to build a wide receiver room?
Honestly, neither, but I mean, of the two, London. But I think the problem with Pitts is people love the idea of Pitts. Mm-hmm. They think he's this guy, and his rookie year he was. I don't know if it was the injury. I don't know what it is, but the guy yet averages less than 40 yards. Every time you look at him, he looks like a superstar, but then you watch him play and you don't see him. He disappears. And I don't know if that's the quarterback play or just the player. So I'm watching this and I'm like, this guy's supposed to be the star, but I look up at the end of the game, he's got 3 catches for 30 yards. He's got 10 touchdowns in 4 years.
So that's a lot to do with the quarterback play and the injury.
And I blame Arthur Smith for a lot of that too.
Yeah, I blame Arthur Smith for so much of that. Again,
what about last year?
Last year when he was in a brand new scheme with Cousins, before Cousins' arm died, he was averaging 70 yards a game. When Cousins' arm died for that 5-game stretch, he dropped to like 7 yards a game. So
ended up 35 for the year.
He's very quarterback dependent, which is the tight end position, receiving yards as a whole. So again, I go back to the film and I'm like, yeah, Kyle needs to step it up a little bit, but at the same time, they need to use him to his strengths a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I think last year they were feeling him out and figuring out because Zach Robinson never had a tight end like that with the Rams. Mm-hmm. And never seen, like, he had Tyler Higbee and like the Gerald Everett. Like, these guys are meh. So now he's got a tight end who like can do all the different things Kyle Pitts can do, and he's like, okay, now I really know how to use him. Towards the end of the season, he was using Pitts out in the slot. He was using them out wide. He was running a lot of split release games with London and Pitts. Towards the end of the year, London was getting wide open. Pitts was drawing double coverage, so he was like, well, I mean, it's working. So,
yeah, I just look at it. This is the 4th overall pick in the draft. Did they pick up his option?
They did. Because it's a tight end option, it's like $10 million.
Right. So this is it. This is it for him. He either has a big year or they move on, which is probably why there's a little bit of the trade noise in the background.
But I think tight ends take a while. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, from my standpoint, like, making a decision on a tight end, even after year 3, is tough, right? Because at the end of year 3, you have to decide if you're picking up the 5th year.
Yeah, and it takes time to develop. Yeah,
he also turned 24. His rookie year, he was 20 years old. He couldn't drink a beer his entire rookie season. He's younger than Josh Simon, who they signed to be his backup.
Who's a rookie?
Who's a rookie?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and the trade rumors they're starting here in Philly because all of our tight ends are on the final year of our contract, and we want another tight end. That's what that is.
So I've done some digging into this. They're starting in Philly because they're coming from Howie.
Yep.
Howie's been calling Atlanta for 3 straight years now, wanting Kyle Pitts.
Yep.
Atlanta's told him, give us a 1st-round pick and we'll consider it. Mm-hmm. For 3 straight years now.
Yeah, Howie's just waiting for him to come down on the price.
And they won't come down on the price. They'll have Pitts come through for year 5, see what he does. Pitts goes off, he gets extended. And then it'll be, they ain't never trading Pitts.
Yep.
Sorry, suck it. Like, that's what they will say. They'll be like, hey, we told you we're not trading him unless you give us a 1st.
Yeah, and I hear some of those rumors, but I'm like you said, Scott, I don't think it's coming from within the Atlanta building, right? It's
like a horror movie.
The media creates
inside the house. Then why are we worried about it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the Atlanta media is like, this is just noise. Like, it's not even coming from Pitts' agent. It's coming from an agent who works with Howie Roseman, an agent that works with Stephen Jones with the Cowboys, an agent that works with the guys out in Denver. Like, it's coming from outside agents, a guy that worked with Arthur Smith Arthur Smith up in Pittsburgh might have tried, but he and Terry Fontenot didn't. There's a reason why Smith got fired and Fontenot stayed, and there's some bad blood there. I'll just put that out there.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah,
agents have Adam Schefter's cell phone. So if they need something, if the agent needs something for leverage, for negotiation or something, they can generally use somebody like Schefter. Schefter gets a story out of it, the player gets some PR, and the agent gets a little bit of negotiating leverage. Right? Because it's all contracts are all negotiations and leverage. Right? And you have to know, does the player have the leverage or does the team? And here's news, if you're watching, hot take. Until you've played 4 accrued seasons in the NFL, the leverage is 100% with the team. It might even be 150%. The players have almost no leverage until they have played year 4. And it's not entering year 4. They need to have played year 4.
And even then, there's still the franchise tag, the transition tag.
Yep.
Waiting for that original team to get something back. Like, I remember a couple years back, people were like, oh, Lamar Jackson, Atlanta should go out and get Lamar Jackson. The Ravens were never letting anybody touch Lamar Jackson. When they slapped that non-exclusive tag on him, they said, hey, come and try it. Do our negotiations for us, lock up your cap space for a week, and then deal with it. The logistics behind that are why the Falcons never even talked to Lamar. And again, the fact that Lamar doesn't have an agent also kind of killed that, because there was no back channeling that Lamar could have done at the combine that a lot of these teams do at the combine.
You know something?
Also known as tampering, but every team does it at the combine. So whatever.
Scott, you just gave me here's a great take. So, by the way, if you tuned in to see the Seahawks, that's going to be tabled to next week.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Compare. we still have to get to the Falcons defense, but
yeah.
Scott, you just brought up a good point. The Lamar Jackson no agent and the Shedeur Sanders no agent.
Oh, that hurt both of them.
Look at how much that hurt both players.
Yeah.
Because do we think that Shedeur would have fallen to round 5 if he actually had an agent that prepped him for the draft process?
Exactly. No.
If he had an agent that had prepped him properly for the draft process, especially because of who he is, he could have had like a Condon or like, a Malugeta. And I probably butchered that name, but like he's the guy that represents Jesse Bates and, a bunch of these guys. Would you rather have those guys, or would you rather have, dear old dad, Deion Sanders doing it? I'd rather have those guys doing it.
Yeah, I was about to say he had Deion functioning as his agent, and we see how Deion treated his draft. I
was thinking the same thing.
So Deion treated it like it was him, but he didn't realize his son is not him. You can't just blow off all these teams because you're so special, and Shedeur wasn't so special. If Shedeur had a legit agent, he probably would have went in the first round. More than likely,
at least in the second. At least in that top 40 range, right?
Yeah,
where guys actually end up being decent.
Yeah, but he blew his. That's the thing where
he would have gone where Tyler Shuck went.
Yeah, that's where everybody wants to say it's like collusion and all that for Shedeur. It's just that teams, you need the talent, but you still need to like the player. So that's what that said. The teams just didn't like Shedeur Sanders as a person.
And the agent can prep him to be liked.
Yes.
Like an agent would prep him for when he met with the Giants, in my opinion.
Exactly. Agent would have told him to do that work that the Giants gave him before the meeting.
Right.
I have a little bit of a hot take on Shedeur here. Very similar personality to Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, no. No. Come on.
No. I'm telling you, personality-wise, Aaron Rodgers fell to 24 because of his personality, but he was so damn talented on the field. But his agent smoothed a lot of stuff over for him that got him still taken in the first. So that's where I'm going with that. I'm not saying Shedeur is as talented as Rodgers. I'm just saying I really liked his tape, and he was my top quarterback in this draft out of all the guys. But
you like Shedeur? I
like Shedeur more than Ward. But to be fair, my highest grade on a quarterback was 15 versus like mid first versus anything higher. I had a mid first on Shador. I had a late first on Cam Ward. Didn't really like any of the other quarterbacks. I had like a high 2 on Jackson, or not. It wasn't even Dart. I even forget who the third one is because I wasn't really super focused on quarterbacks this year. But like I wasn't big on this quarterback class. It felt a lot like the 2022 quarterback class.
I think it'll turn out to be worse.
Milroe was my third guy, and I think Milroe needed to sit a year behind a competent quarterback to learn the game. Yeah. Which I'm glad he's behind Sam Darnold because I think that's going to be the best thing for his career.
Yep.
But I think by year 2, year 3, Milroe's starting in Seattle.
He has to be, yeah.
Oh, and I don't even think it's going to take that long. Yeah. Right? Like Darnold in Minnesota was throwing to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, perfect.
Do we see anything like that on the Seattle offense right now?
No.
They've got some fun pieces. I will say that. They got Cooper Kupp. They got Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, I know people say they're both slot guys, but they're both also X guys, right?
They got Torrey Horton.
Yeah, I'm about to say, look out for Torrey Horton.
I see Horton as a Z, so that's like your Z right there. Like, they've got a crew of receivers that are really solid. They don't really have a tight end that I respect.
They drafted Arroyo. We'll see how that goes.
Like I said, they still don't have a tight end that I super respect, but like it's a decent offense to work out of. They've got some great running backs though. I love Charbonnet. Huge fan of KW9. Like that dude's amazing.
And then Damian Martinez.
Don't sleep on the fact that Darnold is staying in a Shanahan style offense. That
I'm not.
He may end up being better than a lot of people think in Seattle.
I'm glad
I unloaded him in Dynasty. As soon as he went to Seattle, I was able to get who was the quarterback that New England traded to Dallas.
Joe Milton.
Yes, I got Milton and a first for Darnold, and I like pounced on that deal.
Yeah, because that first round pick's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, and that became Jackson Dart. So
there you go.
Yeah, but that was what I did in Dynasty. But we still have
I had a third on Dart, but that's a whole other conversation.
Jim desperately wants to get us to the defense.
Yes.
Well, we're at 52 minutes, and we don't want to turn this into a marathon.
I'm okay if we go to an hour and 10. We're fine.
Yeah. But, Bob, what is your summary of the Falcons' defensive scheme as you see it?
You know, I think it's a hybrid scheme that they're trying to piece everything together and just maximize what they have. I mean, I like the fact they run the 4-3-3-4 and they're trying to mix it up. They're doing a lot of different things. Raheem Morris is an excellent defensive coach, and I think Ulbrich is pretty good too. So I hope. I mean, I like their draft. I mean, I think Jalen Walker is going to solidify that defense. You know, the fact that they went out and spent everything on defense, and defense better be freaking good. But you got Jalen Walker, who I think was the best linebacker in the draft. You got Xavier Watts, who was arguably the best safety in the draft. You know, James Pierce, okay, you needed an edge. I get it. I don't know that I would have traded up to get him and given up a first round. I would have maybe wanted to see what I could get in the second there, but, you know, so be it. So, you know, I kind of like what they did on defense. And, you know, like Scott pointed out, they only had limited picks. They picked their poison. They went defense. If they're vastly improved on defense and they play this ball control box out, we're going to be the giant team in the NFC South and win some games. You know, hey, it could work for them. I mean, it's the NFC South. Anything could fucking happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, EJ, how would you describe the Falcons' defensive scheme as you see it?
Yeah, very multiple front. I seen from what I seen, they had a lot of odd fronts. Coverage wise, it looks like look more zone coverage than man. But I think I think their main issue was getting after the quarterback. They're like bottom of the league in sacks. They gave up almost the highest completion percentage to quarterbacks. I think you've seen it through the draft. I think their real issue is getting after the quarterback because I think quarterbacks were just a little bit too comfortable moving the ball against them. With their odd fronts, I think the addition of Jalen Walker and James Pierce, it fits the mold of what they want to do. Both of them you can say like they'll have 5 men on the line of scrimmage, basically still only 4 are coming. One is dropping it off in the shallow zone coverage. I think both Jalen Walker and James Pierce has the athleticism to cover the shallow or at worst the apex. I like the addition of Devon Diablo in the middle as your stack linebacker. That's going to help because I think the main issue, I think they're going to be a faster defense. They're going to be able to rush off the edge. My issue is with the spine of that front 7 right up that middle. I think Zach Harrison is a bigger body than they've had. I think him and David Onyemata and Devon Diablo, just that middle, I think that's going to be the issue right there. If they can plug up that middle, then they're gonna let those outside rushers come after it. Jesse Bates. I'm a huge fan of Jesse Bates. I think he's one of the best in the league. I like AJ Terrell, but my thing is get those rookies up to speed as fast as possible. I want to see Billy Bowman. I want to see Xavier Watts, and I want to see the 2 pass rushers. You put all of them together, you got ball skills in your defensive backfield. You got speed all coming off your edge. And Billy Bowman, I think he'll do fine as a nickel player. I think he'll do excellent as a nickel player actually. But my whole thing is get your young guys up to speed. They're going to be young. They're going to be fast. You got to see how they get up to speed with the rigors of the NFL season. But I would like to see them get a little bit bigger and more stout in the middle.
Yep.
So be interesting to see. Just one thing, they played a ton of light box last year. Mm. I want to see if this year, if they go, and I think Walker will help that if you want to stay in a light box. But I think you got to. I mean, it'll work in the NFC South because there's no dominant running team in the NFC South. But when they start to play outside the division, and especially if they make it to the playoffs, that's not going to work. They're not going to win games in January playing that light box.
Yep. So, Scott, do you want to describe the defensive scheme and as well describe why I love the Falcons draft class as much as I do, especially the first 4 picks? But go ahead and tell us how you see it.
So the Falcons run a lot of odd front, as EJ was saying, in terms of guys with their hands down. Like 95% odd front. Mm-hmm. Like lots of odd front. They do run some of it in very similar to like a Seahawks style 4-3 under. Mm-hmm. With Jalen Walker here now, with James Pierce here now, with Leonard Floyd here now. Mm-hmm. That's going to make the edge rotation a lot better because they're only really carrying over the one good pass rusher they had last year and Arnold Ebiketie, and then they're getting Braylon Trice back from an injured reserve because he had a torn ACL last year that he tore in the first preseason game. So they're finally getting some guys back and really getting the guys that they want in this scheme at edge. Also, firing Jimmy Lake was the smartest thing they ever did because that dude was just running soft coverage all the time and never running press. Ulbrich is let's get in their face, let's hit them in the mouth. He's going to run a lot more press coverage. It's going to help those pass rushers get home. After the bye, they started running a lot more press, and then they had 20 sacks in 5 games. So I think a lot of that had to do with Raheem saying, hey, I got the keys, James. Get the hell out of the defensive room. Like, I think that's what happened behind the scenes because Raheem took over a lot of defensive stuff right after the bye, and that defense looked a heck of a lot better up until that Panthers game, which I think he gave the keys back to Jimmy just for one last game for some godforsaken reason. But completely different scheme was called in that game versus the other games right after the bye. They're still going to run a lot of that. Harrison plays more of a true end, right? He's not really an edge. He's never going to stand up and rush off the edge the way some edges do. He's not really a true interior defensive lineman because he's never going to play a technique inside of a four eye. He's always going to play that 4-eye to 6 tech. More often than not, that 5 and 6 tech is going to be his home. Like every single down, that's going to be his home. They're going to run Ruka Rororo, which I'm not saying that last name again. They're going to run Rook in that one technique. Rook's up to 310. He's 6'6", 310. He's their one tech. He's the guy that they want pushing through the middle and just being that bulldozer. They've got a guy named Quan Graham who's going to spell Rook. At 3 tech, they've got David Onyemata. They went out and got Morgan Fox. They've also got Brandon Dorless who's going to rotate in that spot too. In some of the pass rushing packages, they might pull Harrison off and have Leonard Floyd playing that 5 tech, but he's really just going to be a hand in the dirt defensive end, running out of probably a 7 or a 9 even. And they'll run wide 9 a lot in this scheme. Jeff Ulbrich loves the wide 9. So in nickel, it wouldn't shock me if they ran, even if they're standing edges, they're with a 2-4-5, they're going to run a lot of wide 9. I do see Xavier Watts starting at strong safety this year. I do see Billy Bowman starting at slot corner this year. I think those guys were drafted specifically for those roles. And I know that we get all up in arms about the trade that the Falcons made for James Pierce, but they traded next year's first to use this year because they really love James Pierce. They have a role to sign for him. And I guarantee you it's that wide 9 and nickel. Just get after the quarterback and take him down and kill the quarterback.
That's what he's best at.
Jalen Walker's playing nothing but edge this year. That's his role. He's nothing but edge. They might later in the year use him as an inside linebacker here and there, but it'd be in that Caden Ellis role. I think after this year, Caden Ellis is going to be gone because he's in the last year of a contract and he's 31 after this year.
So let's talk about the Atlanta draft day trade to get Pierce, right? Because they traded, it was next year's 1.
Next year's 1.
2 this year. Was it like a 2 and next year's 1?
They traded the 46th overall pick this year, and they traded next year's first round pick to get number 96 or number 101 and the number 26 pick.
Yeah, so they got a first and a fourth. They're giving up a first and a second.
Yeah, essentially they traded down from the 2nd to the 3rd, and then they still got the guy they actually wanted in the 2nd round. They were targeting Xavier Watts as the number 46 pick, and they still got him at 96. So they're like, did we really lose anything except next year's first and next year's 5th and that little mini trade up? Not really. And then
it's interesting, right? So one of the things I'm working on the simulator right now is we're building a trade model. And this Atlanta trade would be like a great example of, if you add it up, it's a relatively even trade. But the fascinating thing is that it's basically Atlanta is making a bet, in my opinion, that they're picking in the back 10 spots of the draft. And if you're picking between 22 and 32, there's not usually a first-round graded guy there.
Exactly.
So if you have a first-round grade in Pierce, to your point, Scott, you go up and you get him, because if you're picking in that same spot next year, you're not going to get a player that's the caliber.
Exactly.
So Walker was 2 on their board. Pierce was 9. So in their view, they got 2 top 10 players at 15 and 26.
That works. And that's my thing about trades. If you identify somebody as your guy, go get him. Like just be right about your guy. I don't you think the Chiefs are mad about what they trading up to get Pat Mahomes? They don't care what they like. If that's your guy, it's a blank check. It doesn't matter what you trade up because that's the guy that's going to take you where you want to go as a team.
And the Chiefs traded like a first, a fourth, and another first. Like they're like, dude, we smoked that trade.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they'll do that every day. They'll do that every day.
Buffalo traded a 1 and 2 twos to get Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You think the Bills care about what they traded up for Josh Allen?
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh yeah, dude, we killed that trade. We got a franchise quarterback.
All right, but hold on. Devil's advocate. Okay, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, James Pierce. What doesn't fit in that picture?
Yeah, but they didn't trade multiple first-round picks or multiple second-round picks for Pierce. They traded down 55 spots, got the guy they were still going to get anyway, and then got James Pierce.
Yep.
And by using their 26th pick this year. So they really didn't lose anything except 55 spots. They're still got a first-round pick from next year, used it this year. And they got an extra year of James Pierce.
Yeah, and I say, like, if you identify as a player that's going to help your team immensely, just go get him. Like, trade that first round pick, go get him. It doesn't matter what you got to do to get him. Just trade up and go get him.
And we've been clamoring for him. We've been clamoring for a pass rush here in Atlanta for years. So the fact that he went out and got 2 guys, and then over the last 3 years has taken, multiple second and third round guys that they've finally been developing And now they're going to use all these guys together and say, hey, Rook, Dorless, all these guys are now being used together in rotation. Ebiketie. Oh, let's go get Leonard Floyd and be that example for the entire group. Hey, you work directly with James Pierce and you're going to teach him how to pass rush. Like, we've been criticizing the pass rush forever, and then we go out and get 2 pass rushers, and I was like, oh, they gave up too much. Who cares? Fix the problem on your team.
Yeah.
So if you look between, let's say, what Atlanta has invested in the defensive line the last 2 or 3 drafts, you could look Philadelphia, I believe the last 3 years has heavily invested defensive line. Look at what the Rams have invested in the defensive line the last, I believe it's 2 drafts, but maybe it's 3. Where there's basically a room of about, 7 of the 10 guys in the room are on rookie deals.
Yep.
Right? There's a formula there.
Exactly. It works. And like a good defensive line.
Championships.
Exactly. Like Pat Mahomes' greatest fear is a good defensive line. That's what gets him beat in Super Bowls. We saw it in 2020 with the Tampa Bay Bucks, and you've seen it just this last year. I mean, it wins.
Yep.
And how do you win a hotly contested division where you're probably going to have, the Saints are probably going to suck this year. Let's just be honest. They've got no quarterback.
Yep.
But the Panthers are probably going to be a 7 to 9 win team. The Falcons are probably going to be an 8 to 12 win team, depending on how the close games go, because they're going to be in a lot of them. The Bucks are probably going to be an 8 to 12 win team as well, again, depending on their close games.
Yeah.
Those 50-50 one-score games change a lot for a team all year.
Bucks and Falcons fighting for the division.
It's going to be those 2 teams, I think, at the top of the division. And in a hotly contested division, what do you need to invest in? The lines, because that's what's going to get you the division. Now, I'm going to be a hot take artist right now. I think Atlanta's winning 11 games. I think the Bucks are winning 10 or 11 games too. And I think those 2 teams are both going to go to the playoffs this year. One of them is going to be a wild card.
So I'm going to go look at my simulator to see what my preseason prediction was for Atlanta. You guys can carry on. I'm going to go take a look.
The one thing I don't like about this from the Falcons, from the trade perspective, is are we okay with Sean McVay having 2 first-round draft picks and going into what's probably the best quarterback draft in the last 2 or 3 years next season? And now all of a sudden, the Rams, who will sell their souls to get somebody, replace Matt Stafford.
I feel like
we just gift wrap that to McVay.
So I feel like we say this every year. This is the best quarterback draft next year. This is the best quarterback draft next year. This is the best quarterback draft next year. How many times has it come true? Like 2020, it's come true. 2021 was supposed to be a great quarterback draft. Only one of those guys is still with his original team. 2022 was supposed to be a bad one, and it wound up being a bad one. 2023 was supposed to be a decent one, and you've got 1.5 starters, depending on how young is considered. So, do we have a great quarterback class this year? Or should we let it play out and see what's actually there?
Here's what I'm seeing, right? Because we're podcasting quarterbacks every Friday. We cover 5 quarterbacks at a time. I think of the top 10 QBs that are on the board right now, I think 6 could still go back to school for another year.
Yeah,
and probably should.
Right. And so the challenge will be if you are because I don't know that Nussmeier's out of eligibility, for example.
Yeah, I think Nuss is coming out though.
But I think he'll come out. But meaning that even somebody
staying.
He should.
But this is what I mean is that we could be looking and we're putting a lot of stake in Nussmeier being in this draft class. And while he could have been in last year's draft class, as would Alar, I think if memory serves me correctly, Nussmeier could go back for another year.
Probably.
Right, and that's what I mean.
I think he's year 5 for him. I'm not sure if he's coming back, but
right.
I mean,
but even if Nussmeier and Alar are in this QB class, the next group, we're basically talking about redshirt sophomores. And we're basically hyping up redshirt sophomores that are probably not going to be in the draft class.
Yeah. The thing about this draft class is they're lot more physically gifted than last year's class. So when you see the physical traits, it captures your imagination, like, oh, what these guys can be because they got strong arms, they're mobile, and they're fast. That's why we tend to think that, oh, this class is going to be better. Last year's class, there were some physical limitations. So it was a cap on what they could be as players. This year's class, these guys have a higher ceiling. They haven't reached their ceiling yet, but they do have that higher ceiling. It's just a matter of who actually gets to that point.
Well, and here's the other thing with NIL.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these guys, you make $4 million a year, roughly $5 million a year, $6 million a year on your rookie deal.
Mm-hmm.
They're making $3 to $4 million on their NIL deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who's like, why not just go back for another year, get better, go higher?
Yeah.
Like, that's why I think Sellers is going to stay.
Yeah, they said this past year Sellers turned down $8 million.
That's why I think Manning's going to stay.
Yeah,
another year. That Texas money, that's oil money. Like they got all the money in the world.
They're gonna give him whatever he wants. He's staying.
Jim knows what I'm talking about too. Like,
Manning's not going to stay for the money. Manning's not going to stay for the money. He is going to stay, but it's not going to be the money. He's got more money than they know what to do with.
He's going to stay because his pop and his uncle and his dad and his other uncle are all going to be in his ear going, just take another year.
Yeah, that's the Manning way. They stay.
Just go get a national championship that, your uncle got.
Well, I actually think it's more of pulling the Eli Manning, meaning they're going to look to see who's picking in the top 3.
Yep.
Right? Meaning that if it's Cleveland, don't go there.
Yeah,
if it's New Orleans, they don't want him there either.
Exactly.
Mickey Loomis doesn't know how to manage a roster.
Right.
Or
but if Sean McVay had a top 3 pick, of course you go there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that would take the Rams collapsing.
Or
the Rams have 2 first-round picks.
I don't see the Falcons having a top 3 pick. I don't see the Falcons being that bad this year unless they lose Penix and Cousins to season-ending injuries.
I have the Falcons picking 27th in the simulator. I don't think the Rams' wheels fall off.
No, I don't think so.
But the Rams have the draft capital.
They could trade up.
Get up, I believe, to the 5th overall pick.
Because even if the Falcons, say, pick, I don't know, 15th again, which I think that's kind of their floor, is that 8-9 record, picking 15th again. Okay, that's fine. That 15th with the Rams possibly being in that 22 to 25 range, because I have them losing in the first round of the wild card probably. Those 2 picks plus next year's first, that gets you into the top 5, if not the top 3.
Yeah.
And McVay with a Manning would be scary fun.
Oh, boy.
Right? So I get that.
Yeah. Or they're probably just waiting for the Colts to get done with the Anthony Richardson experience.
That too. That dude sucks.
So just to give everybody, I'm looking at the draft value chart now. I have the Rams picking 25th and 27th in the simulator. Right, so the 27th is Atlanta's pick, and I have the Rams picking 25th.
You have a playoff game? Yes.
You have the Rams at 27th. Are you the Falcons 27th? How many?
I have the Falcons at 22nd in my projection. But even that's
this is my favorite time of year because I get to define my draft order before teams play a game. But if you add pick 27 and 25, would it shock you to find out that you could get all the way up to pick 7?
Wow.
No, and then you add next year's first, and you can go up to the top 3, top 2,
exactly.
top 1.
That's what I mean. Like the Rams already have enough capital to get into the top 10.
And you think the Rams wouldn't gladly do that? And Stafford being like, "Dude, I'm 39, I'm done. My wife has brain cancer again. Like I'm done."
Yep.
Like I could see that happening.
Yeah.
If they want to, that's why I don't like that trade because you're basically gift wrapped in McVay, a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah.
But the Rams aren't in our division. We don't care.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you have to play them to get to the Super Bowl, though.
That's a problem for another day.
I think
it's that good to where that's actually a problem. That's the point that I'm making. We're not even good enough to even make that a problem right now. Let's focus on getting to the playoffs. Once
When
we can
was the
regularly get to
Falcons'
the
last
playoffs, then we
playoff
can
game?
focus on who we see in the playoffs.
So, Scott, when was Atlanta's last playoff game?
2017 against the Philadelphia Eagles, and Julio Jones was held on a 4th and 10 in the red zone. And I know because I watched that play 6 times, and that cornerback was hugging him the entire route, and it was not called. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
It's playoff football. Let them play.
Because it happened in the 2012 NFC title game. They had Navarro Bowman was hugging Roddy White 10 yards down the field.
It's the guts of the game. You can't.
Didn't they switch a rule right after that? Like, didn't they say now we can go to pass interference on instant replay?
No. Don't put that on the Falcons. That was on the Saints. The Saints had a guy who got smacked by Nickel Roby Coleman.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah,
and then they were like, oh, no, it's pass interference. Or, I mean, you had the ball first in overtime after that call. Had you just, I don't know, kicked the field goal when you were in field goal range, you would have won the game. So you have no sympathy from me because Sean Payton really wanted that touchdown instead of just kicking the field goal. So no sympathy. It's not my fault your coach got too big for his britches and then Breeze took a hit and threw a pick.
And he didn't go on tilt after the horrible missed call?
Peyton? Oh, yeah, he went on tilt. He went on tilt, but again, he still had a chance to win the game, should have won the game, because if you win the game after a bad missed call like that, you can be like, listen, we still won this game in spite of the ref. This should have been us.
Yep.
And then that Rams team got dominated in the Super Bowl by the Pats, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It was like 13-3 or something like that.
So
defensively, they got dominated. I mean, that was one of the worst Super Bowls.
So why don't we pause and give a quick commercial? So, Bob, do you want to let everybody know who you are? I see a couple people from your podcast feed, but we have some other, Scott brought some of his entourage with him too. So,
yeah, Steelers Sanctuary. We're live on Mondays and Thursdays. We're sponsored by Ultra GM. We have a lot of fun talking Steelers football on our podcast. If you didn't watch the podcast tonight, go back and rewatch it. There's a great argument about Darius Slay versus Jair Alexander between Dave and I, and then we all took turns ripping on the ESPN 25 years of this century team, which is absolutely ridiculous if you didn't see it. But yeah, check us out every Monday and Thursday. It's a lot of fun, wild chat. Guys do an awesome job in our chat, and we really
EJ.
Hey everybody, I'm EJ. You can see my Twitter handle right there, bottom corner. You can find me. You can find me here every Thursday. The Mrs. Our Relevant podcast every Thursday 9 p.m. We doing schemes. We do draft talk. Pretty much all type of NFL content every Thursday at 9. You can also find me on X where I do breakdowns, film breakdowns, player evaluations, scheme evaluations. I don't do clickbait, hot takes, or rage bait. I pretty much just go with the film. So if you want to argue with me, don't argue with me, argue with the film. That's pretty much all I get. That's all I get.
So, and the EJ's best tweet of the week was the film is the meat, the statistics are the potato and the vegetables.
Yes, it did. Like, you got your main dish and you got your side dish. You can have, it's a steak dinner. The film is the steak. The stats and analytics are the mashed potatoes and vegetables. You can live without the mashed potatoes and vegetables. You can't live without the steak. So that was just my take on the balance between film and stats.
So EJ is a must follow. I also want to compliment EJ and Scott for not having the dogs and the cats like boring at each other on camera. But Scott, do you want to let everybody know who you are and how they can find all of your Substack and related information?
So I'm Scott Karasik. I've been writing about the NFL draft and football for the last 15 years. You can find my Substack at Scar Draft. Just search for Scar Draft. Also, You can find my Twitter handle. It's right there. It's Karasik S. I also do a podcast that covers the Falcons and right now the Atlanta Braves while they're in season with my buddy T. Will. And that's normally Thursdays at 6:30. But didn't do it today because T. Will had something come up, but we will should be back next week for that. But yeah, you can find me on those. Also, I have a question for EJ.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take your steak?
Medium rare.
Good.
Medium
Okay.
rare. Honestly, and if I'm in the right mood, I go for rare. Sometimes I'll tell the waitress just bring me the cow. I'll kill it myself.
Gotta trust the steakhouse for rare. I get that. So like, I'm a medium rare guy myself.
Mm-hmm.
But at my favorite spot, I'll have a rare steak. I'll actually have what they call Pittsburgh style. It's nice burned and charred on the outside, and then it's
I like
in the
that.
middle.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I can build on that. So, first of all, the best steak I ever had, I was in Vegas, and my girlfriend got us a reservation at Hell's Kitchen. That was that filet was the best filet I ever had.
It's Gordon Ramsay. Come on.
Yeah, that's Gordon.
That was impressive. There's a place here, and I shouldn't say here. It started in Michigan, but they happen to have one in Dayton, and they serve steak on an 800-degree stone. So literally,
is it a
you
salt
can
stone?
sear the outside and just leave the inside blood red. It is. That's my go-to steak if I'm not at Hell's Kitchen.
Is it a
also
one of those salt
$30
stones?
or $40 cheaper? But anyway, so yeah.
I'll tell you a good steak story. So my favorite steak is a tomahawk ribeye at Ruth Chris. So we were at Ruth Chris, Ponte Vedra Beach. My wife and they were having a work party for them. We were there having dinner. Got up to go to the bathroom. As I'm coming out of the bathroom, I'm a big guy. I pushed the door wide open and almost hit an older gentleman. And so I apologize to him. Hey, man, I'm so sorry. He's maybe comes up to my chin. He's 5'8", 5'9". And as I'm walking away, I realize I know that guy. So I was in the awkward position of walking back in to say, did I see what I think I saw? Following a guy into the bathroom? It was Arnold Palmer before he passed. I almost killed Arnold Palmer coming out of the bathroom.
Wow.
So, Scott, I appreciate you coming on.
For sure.
You can follow the channel at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. So, Greg, it's good to see you in the chat. I think, Greg, I've seen you here before, probably when Scott has guest appeared before. Yins Nation, thanks for stopping by. Owen, thanks for stopping by. We have daily draft content. Right now, it's one podcast a day. We are very shortly going to be up to 2 podcasts a day plus Saturday plus Sunday. We should be there by mid-July. So what you're going to get when we're doing that is you're going to get the draft covered to you like no other channel. We'll be able to have people that deep dive on day 3 running backs or talk about specific college football matchups. And we don't have to worry about getting everything in because there's going to be 10 other podcasts that week to cover all of the other things. So I'm like the puppeteer suggesting which podcasts cover which content. But I am surrounded by people as smart as Bob, Scott, and EJ. So I can just listen in, and I got a front row seat to the best football coverage anywhere. Really, I don't even need to watch. Like, just tell me on ESPN. Like, I didn't even know they were doing it. I don't even pay attention to ESPN anymore. I have Schefter's notifications on, so if there's a transaction I need to know about, Twitter is the way that I find out. It's a good
Rap Sheet, Schultz, all those guys, man. I got a whole group of them and just a list.
Yeah. So it's really cool to see all 3 of you come on, spirited discussion, everything else. Sorry we didn't get to Seattle, everybody. We will make sure that we do that next week.
Mhm.
But
all my draft brushes were in Seattle.
I'll take the blame for that. I kind of hide.
no, we were off the rails as soon as Matt Ryan came up, and Matt Ryan hasn't played it down in the NFL in 2 years. And somehow we spent 10 minutes talking about Matt Ryan. Blame the moderator for not nipping that one in the bud. But it's all good. Like we're all, like there's no deadline, right? We don't like have to get all of the schemes done by a certain date. That's what we're doing just to kind of get warmed up, and then we'll be
September. You got time.
Yeah. And it gives EJ time. Like EJ, how big's your board right now?
You see, last week I was at 100. I think I'm at like 110, 115 right now. So I'm starting. I haven't. I'm at like 110, 115. I haven't done running backs yet, so I gotta get on running backs. But yeah, and I just found a wide receiver that nobody's talking about, so I'm doing all right.
You want to drop his name?
The brother of Trey Lance. His name is Bryce Lance. Yep. Yes. North Dakota State. I put a tweet up about him the other day. He looks like if Trey Lance played wide receiver. That's how he looks. He's same type of athlete, very smooth.
He's actually good.
Yeah, 6'3", 208. Only thing is at North Dakota State, they got him running 3 routes. They got him running a 9, a post, and they got him on screens. We got to see, get your route tree up, and you got to see him against better competition because the film I saw, he's just running by guys that are
Miami could snag him.
Yep.
Miami would have him running all over the field, man.
Yep, exactly. Yep, but he's a player though.
So, and it seems like right now, like as I'm talking with different draft professors, like some are really nervous. I shouldn't say really nervous. Like I asked, well, do you want a podcast? And he's like, well, I don't want to do wide receivers because I can't sort them out. Like, so there's just a big group of them in a cluster. And obviously we still have a season to sort it out.
That's how summer scouting works.
You don't necessarily want to say what's on your mind in the summer because somebody might be hot taking it and asking you about it in January. So that draft professor, and I'm like, well, first of all, it's pretty cool that you think there's that many people that watch the podcast. But I said that to me, that's what these are the stories that we have to begin with.
Yeah, like I'll do with what I've seen. I'll do wide receivers tomorrow, and I'll stack them up. Like, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it's pretty easy to sort them out.
Film don't lie, right, EJ?
Film don't lie.
Cool. For Bob, EJ, Scott, myself, thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow night covering quarterbacks. Thank you.
Later, guys.